As companies meet current challenges and strategize for what's next, how should they be thinking about their workers? What approach could lead to a diverse and inclusive workforce? To answer this question and more, we're joined by Rosanna Durruthy, the Vice President of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging at LinkedIn. I'm told she's the person who matters there. Rosanna, it's great to have you with us. Look, I've been joking around all day today with my colleagues on whether we should have called this, instead of the future of jobs, we should have called it the jobs of the future, because I know what you know what they're like. And so let me just ask you quickly, as LinkedIn approaches it, and you see so many people who are profiling their skills and telling their stories. What's the gap between what you see online in our society and the jobs of the future?
I think an interesting change that we're beginning to see, a trend that's emerging, is that, online we see jobs that have criteria that includes college degrees, and people typically are successful at finding jobs through referrals from friends who work in those companies. I think the paradox is we've entered a time of change, and the trend line is now showing that companies are looking for people with skills, and sometimes those skills are obtained in an unorthodox way. And what I mean by unorthodox is it may not be by virtue of a degree. It might be through volunteerism. It might be through other experiences obtained. And so we're beginning to see this real shift from degrees and referrals to skills and experiences influencing the opportunity to obtain employment.
So what I'm hearing from you very loudly is that credentialing is going to be disrupted. Is that right?
I think it will be. And I think companies recognize it's a really important capability to be able to not only employ talent that has the skills, but for those companies that are committed to diversity, inclusion, and equity, it's a way of opening the talent pipeline and being able to access individuals who historically have been marginalized or disadvantaged because they haven't had the pedigree. They may have the degree, but it might not be from an Ivy League school. And so the real opportunity is the playing field can be leveled with talented people gaining access to opportunities that previously weren't available for lack of a degree from particular institutions or for lack of a connection who was already in that environment.
Rosanna, some years ago, I was out in the Bay Area and we were doing a program looking at why high-tech companies were lagging in gender equity, why they were lagging in bringing in people of color into the job track in their companies. And I met a bunch of people that had your similar role in diversity and inclusion. And I asked them at a private dinner, how many of you are fig leaves and how many of you have real traction? And honestly, the reaction shocked me. About half of them said, we're not yet getting traction. We're here as symbols or ornaments, but we want to have traction. What is your counsel? Because I know you care deeply about this subject, to those people who are trying to create an inclusive workforce, from going from something ornamental to having traction in their firms and changing the equation when it comes to a genuinely inclusive work environment.
It's such a wonderful question. We certainly have seen the change, perhaps the environment of the last year with the pandemic, certainly with the highlighted focus on social inequities and racial injustice. I think companies have experienced a moral reckoning of sorts around what role are they playing to be a part of the solution and not just contributing to the problem. And so the real benefit for individuals in my role is that this isn't something that companies do because it's philanthropically appropriate or politically correct. This is something companies need to do because it's essential for how we restore and how we build our economy, how we ensure that we're creating opportunity for everyone. A recent Federal Reserve of San Francisco report indicated that full employment for people of color and women would add more than $2 trillion to our GDP. Those aren't small numbers by any stretch of the imagination. And so corporate economic growth is largely driven by participation of a qualified labor force. And that workforce is out there. It's now up to companies like ours to really ensure they're creating that opportunity. And for my peers in the industry to recognize that opportunity comes with great talent, not always geographically in proximity to the valley itself. And so, one of the benefits of having people working from home is that companies have learned that they too have the skill to adapt to a workforce that's a remote workforce. That opens the doors for untold numbers of people who historically haven't worked for tech companies in the Valley because they don't live in proximity to Silicon Valley. They may live in the southeastern United States. They may be living in, the central part of our country. It's a real opportunity to grant opportunity and create talent pipelines where they haven't historically existed for an industry like ours.
That's great counsel. The Biden administration is coming forward with a very, very big infrastructure bill. And by way of what I can see here, it looks pretty popular, even with both parties. So we're going to have a lot of money spent in America, and a lot of it's going to be on infrastructure. A few years ago, when I talked to your then CEO, now Executive Chairman Jeff Weiner, he talked about the importance of people looking at LinkedIn as a storytelling opportunity, particularly for middle skill jobs. And it was very different, video and other ways to show what people's life experiences are, which I know is important to you. As we've now gone through this pandemic, are there shifts in the storytelling frame that you can share with us that are important as we have so many people going to be going into those new opportunities?
Yeah, I think there is. I don't believe candidates have ever had a greater opportunity to control their own narrative, to be able to tell their stories, whether it's the video CV, as we now begin to see on LinkedIn, whether it's the ability to create the storyline around your profile, what your skills are, what your portfolio consists of. And I think for employers, the benefit also comes in the ability to have access to powerful tools like the ones we provide at LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn Talent Insights product provides companies with an opportunity to see, workforce gender representation and assess how their own gender representation compares with the opportunities and talent possibilities in their addressable markets. The use of LinkedIn Recruiter, really enables organizations that are conducting searches to actually be able to build a profile that's representative in gender results. And that balanced representation, if you are looking for an individual who is a financial analyst and there's a 50-50 split by gender, you can actually get your representative results accordingly representing gender in equal measure. And that's a real difference for recruiters who historically have struggled to build pipelines that are gender balanced or to build diverse slates. And then ultimately, I think, someone who was a recruiter previously, we struggle with how do we help companies prevent biased perspectives? And we now have the capacity in our own recruiter administrative tool to turn off the profile view that shows photographs. And with that profile anonymization capability really allows the ability to focus on the skills rather than focusing on the imagery that I think companies have often defaulted to in identifying the talent that they bring into their pipeline. Skill assessments. What a wonderful way to be able to see whether individuals have the skills and to empower the candidate in being able to determine, do I have the right skills? The ability to go to LinkedIn Learning, go through a course, get a certification, and then be able to have that skill assessed to determine whether they qualify for a job. So I think there are so many ways now for companies to think about this far more broadly, to step out of the narrow views and prisms that have led their recruiting efforts, to really de-bias that process and open up the pipeline to be able to create opportunity for individuals who just haven't been visible previously.
Rosanna, we're out of time, but I want to ask you one last question. My friend Jim McKelvey is going to be on the program today, and Jim co-founded Square. He gave Jack Dorsey his first job. And, he said we have a problem, he's told me in the past, with various kinds of stigma when it comes to employing people. Sometimes people are mid-career. He says you can train them to be great coders. People who have, had a speed bump in their lives, maybe been incarcerated. I'm just always interested in the second chance. And, a lot of HR departments are risk averse as opposed to looking at the, as this is important talent on the table. What advice do you have for our HR departments in companies around the nation that need to kind of broaden their aperture a little bit, perhaps?
Yeah, the future of our organizations really rests on inclusive leadership. So whether you are an HR professional or you're a line manager, the ability to not only identify great talent, but to bring out the best in that talent really is empowered by the ability to understand that differences ultimately aren't the challenge. Differences actually create the alchemy for better performance. Diverse teams win. There's been plenty of research that tells us the diverse teams outperform more homogeneous teams, but the real power around unlocking that talent comes in having leaders who understand how to lead inclusively. Companies like LinkedIn and other companies who are making the investment in building the skill sets of people managers and leaders to lead inclusively are ultimately going to be winners in the marketplace because they will have the ability to bring talent in from different backgrounds and create capabilities that really not only embody diversity, inclusion, and belonging, but really allow skills, perspectives, experiences to contribute to innovation and to the growth of their organizations. It's an exciting time for us in HR. It's an exciting time for leaders as we build a new future that's more inclusive.
Well, Rosanna Durruthy, Vice President of Global Diversity and Inclusion and Belonging at LinkedIn. I knew this was going to be a good topic and a solid topic and a hopeful topic, but you made it an exciting topic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to spend time with you.